The number, but we start things off here at 7:20 with a guest this morning, Angela Cockerham. District 96 in the Mississippi House of Representatives. She represents Adams, Amite, Pike, and Wilkinson counties, in part Vice Chair of Appropriations A in the House Committee. Angela, good morning. Thanks for coming in studio.
Good morning, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and appreciate a little bit of your time in what sometimes we call the off season. I'm not sure that there really is an off season for all of you. The session certainly is over. We've got the special session in the rearview mirror, and I'm curious. We've heard from leadership in the House and in the Senate. They've looked back a little bit, but most of their focus is on looking forward. But if you would humor us just for a second with a look back, now that it's all said and done, what's your takeaway from the 2025 session?
I think the 2025 session, Richard, was a great session. We had a special session, as you know, to finish the budget, but we got so much accomplished. I think a lot of times you'll hear a little bit in the political realm and atmosphere that all this doom and gloom and the sky's falling, but if you really look at what's going on in Mississippi and what's happening, oh my goodness, it's a great time to be in Mississippi. It's a great time to be a Mississippian. When you look at starting with what the governor is doing with economic development here in the state, and then you look at the leadership in the House. Lance and I were just talking before you and I came on the air about the House is tough and it's strong, and I think that starts at the top with our leadership with Speaker White. And just if you look at the general bills that we passed and the chairman who did such a yeoman's work in all areas of our committees, and then the appropriation process, what the chairman A through E did there, and how the appropriators worked on both sides. I think overall it was a really, really good session. And you're going to start to see a lot of these general bills. Some of them, as you know, will take effect on July 1st. Yeah. And then we've got a new fiscal budget year that's starting. So overall, I think it was really good. There were some interesting moments, but it wouldn't be a Mississippi State legislature, right, if you did not have interesting moments. And I think it makes for good conversation over coffee and croissants.
Interesting is an interesting way to describe some of those moments that we got. You were involved with the budget process as with your work on appropriations as vice chair of that Appropriations A committee. Can you take us behind the scenes a little bit and talk to us about what those conversations were like? We know that the speaker was very much locked in on one. We're not doing the budget at the last minute. We're not going to do that this year, and stood by that stance. But also the debate back and forth between the end of the session and the special session about some of the special projects, which Speaker White's talked about the fact that we were going to do all of them, or we weren't going to do any of them, but we weren't going to cherry pick and say, okay, this district's going to get this project and this district's going to get this project. What were those conversations like behind closed doors?
Well, I think it all starts from last year when the speaker took the gavel and he basically said, listen, we want to do the budget early. There's no reason for us to all be here, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning trying to do the budget when we have pretty much in January to start hammering this out. And actually, I think this is a great time to say, really, agencies in June are going to start submitting their budget requests to LBO. So it actually is starting right now. But with respect to this particular session dealing with the appropriations, the speaker has been adamant. There has no been any kind of hiding the ball in where he has stood on the budget. And I'm glad that he stuck to his guns. Not that I had any reason to doubt that he ever would, because he's pretty much clear cut, and what he says is what he means. Yep. And so he talked to the appropriators on the House side, said, listen, this is where we want to be fiscally. Over this past several years, we've had a pretty conservative budget, which I think has helped us to this particular point. And so in our conversations on the House side, we've been adamant that we want to make sure that we had special projects because, listen, for a small municipality, for mine in my district, take for instance Gloucester or Liberty, Centerville, Woodville, all across the state you have communities, municipalities, counties who need these projects.
Right.
And he's right that we can't cherry pick. If we're going to do special projects, we need to do them across the board or not at all. We were able to get a budget so that the agencies, were funded. So for fiscal year 26, as you already know, the general funds for our budget, the revenue estimate came in for, well, let's start back at fiscal year 25. That revenue estimate was 7.6, and then we've adjusted that to 7.627. So you've got a $27 million increase for the revenue estimate, but then for the general funds, it came in over 7.1, a little bit over that. So I think overall, fiscally, for the state agencies, we've done pretty well, but we did want to have projects, local projects, and we weren't able to get that done. And it's not anything negative towards the other side, but I think the speaker was right in his opinion and his assessment. And he's hearing from his members. And so when you have members who are saying, Mr. Speaker, and God bless him, because he has 121 of us to deal with. Can you imagine that? And so when you have members who are saying that they need help locally, what is he to do but vow and vouch for his members?
The thing that I had trouble understanding, and I've brought this up a number of times, is, representatives have got to go back to their districts and say, sorry, we didn't get the money this year. But senators have got to go back to their districts and say the exact same thing. The difference is, at least as I understand it, the House was willing to do all of those projects and everybody kind of get theirs, if you will, whereas the Senate was not. And so I guess senators, to some degree, have got to say, we killed it. We didn't agree to do these projects, and they've got to own that. How's that going to play in home districts for senators and for representatives as well?
Well, Richard, that's a very good question. I think that's something that the senators will have to explain. And it's also something that House members, if you just said, have got to go out to explain as well. But I think that, and you've probably seen this, the Speaker sent a letter right before Sonny died, and there were discussions back and forth between the House and the Senate about these special projects. So the way that we have assessed it is that, going forward next year, hopefully we'll be able to do local projects. I've been in the legislature now for almost approximately 20 years. This isn't the first time that we've gone home and not had special projects. It never feels good, though. But you start to go out, like I've done, and talk to my mayors, talk to my supervisors, making phone calls and saying, hey, we unfortunately were not able to get it done. Now, It's not because of a lack of effort from the Speaker, the appropriators, and the House members. It's not that at all. We did put forth a gallant effort to get it done.
One of the questions that I've asked, and I'm not sure that I've gotten a clear answer, or maybe I haven't listened well enough. Do you anticipate that next year the special project money will be 2x? Or is it just going to be, we move forward and 2025 was a year lost in terms of funding for special projects and communities all across the state? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is the money that would have been allocated this year, will that be allocated plus next year's money, or does this year's money just kind of go somewhere else?
It kind of depends, actually. I don't think, honestly, that there's really been a clear determination of whether it's going to be 2x or do you kind of pick up where you left off. Right. As you know, needs change throughout the district for municipalities, for counties, even for state agencies. So I think, again, going back to when I said what the revenue estimate is, and also looking at what the state agencies are going to be requiring in the budget process and their budget requests is going to be really important. As you know, we've got a revenue estimating group who typically around maybe like September, when you start having all these agencies to come in and say, hey, I'm going to need X amount, Richard, to sustain my agency for the next fiscal year. Then you've got these 5 people who are on these revenue estimating group who are coming in giving revenue estimates. They're looking at what the real and gross GDP is. They're looking at what the unemployment numbers are. They're looking at what the employment numbers are. They're looking at what the personal income, that percentage of change, and giving these revenue estimates and then adopting the JLBC what that particular budget recommendation is going to be is so critical. So I would be remiss to come on and kind of say, oh, it's going to be 2X. It's going to be whatever it was this particular year. I mean, the speaker has been really good in making sure, as far as the appropriators are concerned on the House side, that we are staying within his financial framework.
Visiting with Angela Cockerham. She's with the Mississippi House of Representatives, represents District 96. That includes parts of Adams, Amite, Pike, and Wilkinson counties. We'll continue the conversation on the other side of this break. It's Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk, Mississippi. We're back with you right after this. Back with you on Mornings with Richard Cross. Thanks for spending part of your morning with us, for starting your day with us. Glad to have you along for the ride right here on Super Talk Mississippi. Angela Cockerham is my guest, Mississippi House of Representatives. Just kind of finishing up where we were before the break. One of the things that Lieutenant Governor Hosemann talking about the allocation of special funds, is that as they've studied it, they have found that a bunch of municipalities or counties who have been allocated money in the past, in recent years, have actually not spent all of the money that they have been allocated so far. And he said, look, they need to spend the money that we've set aside for them, or let us know if plans have changed and maybe they don't still need those funds, or those funds need to be used in a different way. Is that something that is concerning when you're going through the appropriations process and you get a request from a state agency or from a county or from a city, and they say, we need money for this specific thing? You allocate the money, and then the money doesn't get spent in a timely fashion?
It's something that's considered, Richard. It's something that's considered, but there may be a reason why it hasn't been spent, and that's why I said it's considered. For instance, if there's capital expense money that has been appropriated for a special project, and maybe the municipality that you just referenced, or county, has not spent it, well, has something happened with the project? Has there been some kind of weather-related incident with agencies, particularly when there's money that hasn't been spent? What I have found is that agency head has come in and they've been able to explain, listen, we did ask for this specific request, right? We still haven't spent the money, but here's why. And so I think you have to take that into consideration. And you have to also take into consideration, too, one point is inflation as well, because, sometimes projects go up, sometimes...
Always projects go up. If you're building something, it's more expensive than it was when you asked for the money.
Exactly. You've got to take that into consideration. So I just don't think it's as cut as dry as, we appropriated this money, but the agency or the municipality didn't spend it. I mean, I think you have to do a deep dive and find out why.
Is there good communication on that front, though? Do you feel like that the legislature is communicated with after the money is allocated as much as they should be?
Some agencies, yes. But here's the thing. If you feel that it's not, and this is what I think we've done a good job on the House side, and especially, with the Speaker's leadership, if you feel that it's not, ask. I mean, if you feel like you're not getting the information in the format that you want, or the amount of information that you need in order to make a decision, pick up the phone, ask the director to come over. It's, very few hurdles that you should encounter, I think, in this process, especially with the appropriation process, because you've got LBO and the analysts who are working to collect the data. You're starting in June. The state agency is to start inputting what their request is. They have until August the 1st, Richard, a state agency has until August the 1st to finalize their budget, submit it. And then you've got your budget agency hearings that are starting in September. And then in January, fast forward to January, you've got the House and Senate that are having budget hearings.
Right.
And so I think on the House side, and I'm pretty sure on the Senate side, this is happening as well, the agency hearings are publicized. If you want to ask a director or an agency head a question, you have an opportunity to do so. So if you feel like you're not getting the information, me especially, I'm going to find out what I need to know.
That's certainly a fair response. I talked to some people that were involved in the appropriations process, and you laying out those deadlines and kind of the timeline makes a lot of sense. So June 1st, new fiscal year, or
July 1st starts.
Sorry, new fiscal year starts July 1st. Those agencies are already starting to put together budget requests.
In June.
But I talked to people that said, even in the session, there was still some ambiguity from some state agencies that would receive funding as to exactly what they needed. Is that, if that is indeed going on, does it allow for what the speaker has said in terms of we're going to get the budget done sooner to actually happen? Because it feels like it takes everybody being on the same page if it's going to happen that way.
I think it does take everybody working on the same page. I'm very proud of the appropriation team and the committee that the speaker has assembled. So here's the thing. If there is a colleague or a House member who's saying, okay, there's ambiguity with respect to a particular agency, then has that been communicated? That would be my first question, whether that's to the speaker. And I'll say this, whether it's the speaker, governor, or any of the leadership, there's not been one moment that I've gone and said, hey, I need help or I have a question, and not gotten the help or the assistance that I've needed. So there is a plethora of resources that are available if there's a question about a state agency. And again, what I found is that if I have a question about an agency, we're going to find out what that answer is. And so you've got the chairman, A through E, of appropriations that you can also ask these questions to, but you have to participate in the budget process. And what I mean by that is when there are budget hearings, you actually have to show up. And I'll say this is that
it seems like a fairly low bar to clear, but yes, okay.
Well, you would think it would be, but you do have to show up, and you have to show up and participate and be a part of the process. Yeah. And I have not encountered any agency that has been reluctant to give information, and when that does happen, then you have to consider whether or not to fund that particular request. But definitely if a colleague has any question about an agency or a budget process, I found, Richard, that all of the chairmen have bent over backwards. The speaker has bent over backwards to accommodate, to answer those questions. And if we don't know, and you'll probably see us during the proceedings, and occasionally there isn't a question that's posed that we do not have the answer to, and rather than make up something on the fly or give it misinformation, we'll say, we don't have that information, but we'll get it back to you. And that's happened commonly as well. But if a colleague has a question or they feel that, okay, this is a little fuzzy or a little vague, we want them to ask, and we want to make sure that we get that information to them.
Visiting with Angela Cockerham, just a couple of minutes left. I'm going to try and work in two more quick ones with you. First of all, 2019 was a shift for you. You were a Democrat that made the move to independent. It's always fascinating to me when somebody publicly has a little bit of an ideology shift in the way they look at the world, or the way they view themselves, or the way they classify themselves. I know you've answered this question a million times before, but I think it's one that our audience is interested in. What led to you making the change, saying, no, I'm not going to specifically be affiliated with the Democrats, but I'm also not going to specifically affiliate with Republicans. I'm going to be an independent?
So it was my personal belief. So actually, I made the switch in 2019, and I don't even think I've ever shared this with the public, so you'll get a little bit of an inside scoop. Okay. Actually, before 2019, I had already been praying about it and considering it. So for me to do it in 2019, I was very proud to do it. It took a lot of conviction and prayer on my part. I have not looked back. I'm very pleased and proud of the decision that I've made. You have to remember that, in everything that we do, it's all about relationships, aside from my personal conviction and beliefs, right? My main goal is to make sure that I'm delivering for my district and for the state as a whole. And I can tell you, you get all these criticisms about the leadership, about this particular person in this position or this particular person in that position. In politics, it's all about give and take. And making sure that you are not only expressing, what you'd like to see, but also listening to hear what the other person has to say. All of my district is not Republican. All of my district is not Democrat. But I tell you what, if something happens, if there's a disaster, and this is not just in my district, it's all over the state, we're all going to come together. We all love each other. We visit each other's churches. And so I needed to dispense with that so I can be able to vote the way that I needed to vote and make sure that I was really, and I've always voted my convictions, but making sure that I'm able to deliver for my district as a whole. And so I haven't actually looked back. You've seen a couple of other people, colleagues who've come out and said, I'm going to be an independent. I suspect in the future you'll see more, hopefully.
It's going to be interesting to see. Less than a minute, was there a single moment or a single thing that pushed you to make that change?
Well, we'll have to have a part 2 of this conversation.
Hey, how about that for a tease? I look forward to continuing.
I'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Sounds great. Angela Cockerham, really appreciate your time this morning. Great visiting with you. Continue to do great things for your district in the state of Mississippi, and I look forward to our next conversation.
I do too. Thanks so much, Richard.
Angela Cockerham. She represents District 96, parts of Adams, Amite, Pike, and Wilkinson counties, southwest Mississippi. Enjoyed that conversation. Quick timeout. We'll wrap up the 7 o'clock hour with you. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. We're back after this.